Welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at a brand new game coming to Kickstarter. This one is called Veiled Fate. It is from Ivy Games and they're calling it a strategic deduction game. That's because we're going to be moving around this board controlling or wanting to control one of the demigods, which we know in secret, and getting them to score more points than the other players over 3 ages. The trick is no one knows who you are and you have no idea who anyone else is.
Right, and we're going to be taking a look today, but we've taken a look because we've played this a few times. We've played it 4 players, I've played it 5 players, and like Jeremy said, it plays from 2 to 8. Now this game is going to scale time-wise with the more players you have, but it's also going to team people up at higher player counts. But like Jeremy said, everyone's going to have a demigod at the beginning of the game. I'm going to secretly show you mine. Of course, now we both know. But no one else knows what demigod you are. Now, the interesting thing is you're not just controlling that demigod out on the board. You're going to be moving any of the demigods out on the board because you're going around these different regions trying to complete these quests, putting various demigods on them, scoring renown or losing renown, which are the victory points in the game.
Now, one of the cool things here is that you notice that right now there's only 2 of us, so we each have our own demigod. No matter how many players participate in this game, you're always going to play with all 9 of the demigods. That means that some of the demigods, you're not going to know whether you want to move them or not move them because you're not going to know what the other players have. But however, all of them will be in play during every single game that you play.
Yeah, and unlike a straight-up social deduction game, like Jeremy said, there's a lot of strategy involved. And with that comes some barriers to entry being broken down for all types of gamers, because if you've ever played a social deduction game, there's always a gamer at the table or more who just isn't used to playing those types of games. They don't know whether they're supposed to lie or not. This game, you can, if you want, just simply focus on your hidden demigod and try to do on your turns whatever you can to score them as much renown as possible. Because even if people find out or figure out throughout the course of the game who your demigod is, it doesn't necessarily mean you're automatically going to lose.
Now, when you look at the board, you're going to notice it's broken into 7 different outer regions and then 1 central city. These regions are going to have an X number of quests in them according to the number of players. We have a 4-player game, meaning we're going to have 4 of these quests that are turned over. The city is going to house 2 different cards in it on each of the different ages, both an age card and a city card. And we'll talk about how to interact with those in just a moment.
Yeah, and of all of these regions, including the city, these are going to be places you'll be able to move the demigods around, except for one. Down here you've got this region that's broken into 2. You've got the Abyss and the Pools. Now these are considered 2 different areas. You're only going to be going to the Abyss if you're smited, or smote rather. And that's going to be something that happens during the game. And once you're in the Abyss, you can move up through the pools and back into the city. This is effectively a way for some of the demigods to be sort of taken out of action for a little bit, potentially slowing down their renown progress.
And to begin the game, each of the players is going to be dealt 5 of these fate cards randomly. These fate cards consist of 2 basic types of cards. You have the feather cards and then you have the scorpion cards. These are vital into how these quests will play out. On a player's turn, they have 2 actions to take. That's either moving any one of the demigods or doing one of the god powers it is listed on this god power sheet. Now, sometimes you may be forced to rest instead, and we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, so I'll talk about moving first. This is going to be largely what people are doing on their turns. The god powers are a little more complicated. We'll get those in a second. If you move, you're simply going to take any one of the demigods and move them in a number of different ways. When they move, they're only going to move 1 space. So you can move to any adjacent region. Now this excludes the pools and the abyss. You can never move to those unless you've been smote to the abyss, or you're moving from the abyss to the pools, or from the pools to the city. Otherwise, you can move from the city to any of the other regions, or you can move from any of the regions to the city, and then potentially on your next action, move to another region. Now, whenever you're moving into a region that has a quest, you can move directly on that quest. And this is the meat and potatoes of the game, because you want to get demigods on these quests, because once they're filled, they're going to resolve.
Now, as you move these demigods around, you're going to be placing them onto the quest, as David already mentioned. This is the most important aspect of the game, because it is at this time that you're trying to get your demigod to land on very specific spots on these quest cards. So, you already know that I'm playing the blue player right here. What I would typically want to do, but not let on to other players, is on my turn move my blue demigod to a quest. There are two different types of icons on these quests. You have the Omega symbol, which are renown, and the victory points that you're trying to acquire, and then you have the size, which remove them. When you move a demigod onto one of these locations, you're kind of telling the other players what you want that colored demigod to do. Then in secret, you're going to take one of these fate cards and place it face down next to that pile. That is kind of your vote on which one of these two sides you want to happen. That is only going to be resolved once this entire quest card is filled up with demigods. We'll talk about that in just a moment as well. One thing we forgot to mention is when you move these demigods around, if you move them into the city, there's also a city card that is located in there, one card per age. There is a city token that will be placed on there each time you move a demigod in, sometimes giving you more cards from the fate deck, and other times giving you renown for certain people that move into those locations. Each one of these city cards plays out very differently.
Yeah, the city cards are very interesting because it gives people a reason to do something other than putting a demigod on a quest. Because as the game proceeds, it's not all about just moving demigods to quests, filling them up. It is going to feel that way probably in the first turn, but then once you get going, you're going to want to move into the city to get some of these bonuses so that you can fill your hand up with more fate cards. These are precious. When you don't have fate cards, your round is pretty much over. Now, let's take a look at a quest card that's been filled. Now, we've randomly filled this up, but there are quest cards that have all sorts of prerequisites on them, and that's one of the interesting things about the quest cards. For instance, this one right here must be filled from top to bottom and across. Other ones require certain colored demigods to be in certain spaces. And then there are 3 categories of demigods, and some of those are underneath on some of these spots as well. But once it's been filled and all of the votes have been cast, the person who filled it is going to resolve that. The first thing they do is they're going to look at the top of the card, and oftentimes it's going to say it requires one more fate card. The person who resolved it or placed the last demigod there is able to pick any one of the other players, not themselves, to contribute one more fate card to the stack. I'll pick Jeremy, probably to my demise. Then they're going to pick these up without looking at them, shuffle them under the table, wherever, just so they don't know what's what, and then you flip these cards over to resolve what happened. The feathers and the scorpions are going to come out. In this case, no scorpions came out. However, this one card came out that we haven't talked about yet. This has a little +2 on it. Whenever one of these comes out, it's a bit of an agent of chaos. You're going to bring out 2 more fate cards from the top of the deck, so this can really change things up. Now, some people might wonder, well, why would someone play something like that? Well, if you wanted this quest to fail, so to speak, but you didn't have any scorpions, your last-ditch effort might be to just put that +2 on and cross your fingers for the top of the deck. And the same goes with the feathers. In this case, the feathers are going to win, so then from top to bottom, you resolve this card.
Yeah, each of these different demigods will resolve from top to bottom, as you alluded to, either giving you renown or possibly losing you renown, or even smiting you to the abyss, depending upon how that vote takes place. This is going to release all of these demigods back into the region and then remove that quest card from the game. Remember, this is all about trying to get the most renown in the game by the end of that 3rd age.
Yeah, and I want to point out, poor little purple demigod here, in this case with all these feathers, did get smote to the abyss. When this happens, they're going to not lose renown, but depending on where they are on the renown track, they're going to go back to the back of the line, so to speak, in that section. That's going to come into play at the end of the game in case there's a tie with demigods in one space. So they lose a little bit of their progress, but they don't lose a full renown. The other interesting thing about the abyss and the pools and their connection to the city is on your turn, if you're ever able to move a demigod from the abyss to the pools, that allows you to instantly draw a fate card and add it to your hand. It's one of the few ways of doing so. If you're able to do that and then move from the pools to the pools to the city action allows you to discard a fate card and draw another one. So you're able to sort of refresh your hand. And then hopefully if you've planned everything right, you've got a city action that you can move over and potentially get even another fate card.
Now remember, you're going to be doing this turn after turn until all the players have either passed in the round or all of the quests have been taken care of. At the end of the round, you're going to look at that specific age card and see what it does as well. Each of these age cards can have various effects that are going to affect the end of that round.
And this is a really cool thing because this really can dictate how you play the game. If you don't want to give away what demigod you have, you might choose 2 random demigods on your first turn just to sort of throw off suspicion and look really hard at that age card. Some of the age cards can give you some points or switch things around in the game itself, such that you could just get one renown, and there may be an age card that, depending on how people vote, is going to swap space 1 with space 3 of the renown track, and you could basically jump into the lead and take a lot of other people back to the beginning.
And it's a great way to hide which demigod you're actually trying to control. Now, we already mentioned moving. You get 2 actions on your turn. You're either moving a character once or 2 characters once, or you're doing one of the 5 different god powers.
Yeah, the god powers are also going to use fate cards, and they use a fair amount of them. You only have 5 in your hand, potentially up to 8, which is the hand limit. But these are going to range from 3, 2, down to 1 fate card that you are going to discard face up and then just perform the god power. Some of these include portaling. Portaling is going to allow you to move a demigod from any location on the board to any quest on the board. When you do that, you can also disregard the rules of that quest. So if this spot required a pink demigod, I can put a purple one there. If this spot required you to put in the top spot first, you can go to the bottom one first. And you're going to want to do this depending on what the rewards are and what cards you have, because this voting is the crux of the game. And the other god powers can really provide some other unique abilities.
Yeah, one of the very cool ones is Smite. Now, typically, when you lock one of these demigods into a location, it's pretty safe. Smite actually allows you to pull one of those off, either from a card or from anywhere on the board, and smite them immediately to the abyss. All of these actions have very unique ways in which they allow you to kind of manipulate the board. And you want to do this, as we already alluded to, in secret. You never want to give your hand on which of the demigods you're trying to control throughout the game.
But like I said, as the game goes on, a lot of people at the table are going to at least have some suspicion of whose demigod is whose, and in which case you can actually really start to push the mind games heavily. I played one game where everyone knew who I was, and I placed my guy assuming that people thought, oh, he's going to be going for the 2 renown on the feather side of that card. And I placed it next to that, knowing that I had a ton of scorpions. Another player at the table used one of the other powers, Transfiguration, to move 2 demigods on one unfinished quest, and they moved me to the spot that I really wanted to be on, which is going to give me renown for being on the scorpion side.
And this is going to take place over 3 different ages with new city cards and new age cards that are introduced each of the different rounds. At the end of that 3rd age, you're going to look and reveal all of the different demigods that the players control, and the player that has the most renown is going to win. And that is Veiled Fate. We invite you guys to also check out our round 1, where we actually play an entire game. You'll see portion of the game, so you'll see it in action. And if you have any questions about today's video, please make them in the comments below. And until next time, take care.
Bye-bye. Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.